All right, it says we're live.
I know, but I'm not sure if they can hear us yet.
I don't know. Let's be entertaining for 20 seconds. So, true story, I was in another call and thought this started in 30 minutes, not 10 or now. So we got very lucky that I looked at my clock. So.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad you made it.
All right. Well, it looks like we're live now. So, hey, everybody, Anna Krueger here with the MAPS ISA coaching program. And we have Katie. Katie, tell us where you're from and what you do.
Hi, guys. I'm Katie Collins. I'm from Austin, Texas. I'm a licensed agent with the Heil Real Estate team here in Austin with Tim Heil. I'm also a ISA MAPS coach, and I'm super excited to be on this webinar and talk to Anna about how you can transfer a client from the ISA OSA to your agent with a high rate of success to ensure that the client shows for the appointment.
Yep.
Get excited.
And Katie's awesome at this. So everybody, Katie, tell everybody how many homes you sold your first year with no prior experience.
First year in real estate with Tim, I came on as the listing specialist, and I sold and closed 144 listings in my first year.
144.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I was wondering if anybody missed it. That's a lot of closings. So clearly Katie knows how to do something right, at least one thing, actually a lot of things right. And so Katie comes from a team, and I love her perspective because she comes from a team that has ISAs. I was and if you're not sure, ISA, OSA, I know some of you, this may be new terms. ISA is inside sales agent, OSA is outside sales agent. They both pretty much refer to the person on the team whose one thing is lead generation and lead conversion. So they're not usually leaving to go meet clients. They're usually 6 hours a day working on talking with leads over the phone. Every now and then maybe door knocking or something like that.
Yep, exactly.
So anyway, so we know that a lot of times if you're doing a relay race, the race is lost in the transfer of the baton. So there's an Olympic race that the United States was winning several years ago. We were winning the race, and in the transfer of the baton to the next guy, we dropped it. We ended up losing the race. And so what happened was the transfer of the item from one person to the next. And we find that a lot in real estate too, where maybe the ISA has a great lead or a perceived great lead. They go to pass it to the agent and something happens and we lose a lot of momentum, we lose clients, and ultimately a lot of money because we're not passing the baton well. So that's what we're going to talk about today is how do you pass it well so it's a good experience for the client, but also you guys as ISAs and agents. So Katie, tell us a little bit about pre-qualification and what that looks like to help this whole thing go smoothly.
Great question. Okay, so first, what I want to really point out here is that everybody across the country, across the world, does things a little bit differently. On our team, when we pre-qualify somebody, we are doing so with the intention that the client understands that the agent is coming out for a listing appointment or a buyer representation appointment. Okay, I've coached a number of teams that took a little while. There's some miscommunication, and I recognized they were just setting up previews without a lot of pre-qualification, and they were having a lot of cancellations, which would be common in that scenario. So on our team, we have a pre-qualification script that we ensure all of our ISA OSAs go through, and they take notes so they can share that information with the agent very easily. In our pre-qualification script, it's really, really, really important that we identify their motivation. I would argue that that is the key element of a worthy client is determining if they're motivated. So we dig actually 3 levels deep to identify and get their true motivation for selling their house.
Yeah.
In addition to that, we're also asking the very straightforward questions like, are you interviewing other agents? When are you wanting to move? How much do you want to list the home for? I assume you're up to date on your payments, and those types of questions. But the point I want to make here with the pre-qualification script is the intention behind it is that they're going to be meeting for a listing consultation or a buyer representation agreement meeting. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense to me. And by the way, guys, type in if you have questions because we can see your questions live and we can explain something further if needed.
Yep.
I just slid away from the screen for a minute to get something. As you were talking, Katie, it made me think of this sheet. And a lot of teams have things like this. It might look different depending on the team. But can you see this on screen? It says seller info sheet.
Yep.
And it's got all the questions on there.
Perfect.
Up top, it's got motivation. And then we have questions about the house. And then if you flip it over on the back, Katie was just talking about asking them, what are the qualities you're looking for in a realtor? It's all on here. So what I recommend is that all of you, and again, it might look a little different depending on your team, but all of you have some type of buyer intake sheet and a seller intake sheet. And my team owner, he used to drive me nuts. And honestly, he totally set up my career by doing this. If I would give him this sheet and it was missing like one little tiny question, he'd be like, you need to call him back and get that filled out. And it drove me nuts. And I saw the wisdom in it after a few weeks, because the people now that showed up that were appointments were actually legit, because they took the time to answer my questions and he was able to prepare. So I just want to add that to what Katie said. It's so important you have a standard of what you ask, and you don't go unless it's filled out.
So absolutely. We actually have very similar guidelines on our team. We have been instructed to call back many times if we're missing some piece of data that we didn't collect. What I'll say about this too, guys, because I really want you to start to look at this like a business, especially if you're looking at developing an ISA team. So the point that you made about, yes, this is a legit appointment, huge. But I want you to also recognize that by having the members of your team identify the standards, then you can accurately enforce those standards and say, hey, look, here it is. Here's what you need to do. And you have continuity across the board, right? So you know, if you have 40 appointments on the calendar, you look to see how your agents are doing and they've got 40 appointments, you know, because your ISAs or OSAs are meeting those standards, that those are 40 legit appointments. It changes the game entirely if you can enforce standards within your business. So yeah, just wanted to make a point there.
Yeah,
okay.
No, that's we had a question. Eric asked if we can get copies of the sheets. These sheets were customized to the Haro group, the team I come from, and where they really originated from was Bold, the Keller Williams Bold class with Diana. And also we've got that, let me see. Yeah, you can go in there. Also, I think a lot of you are probably in the Facebook group, ISA Mastermind group. We've got some in the files in there you can check out as well. And then Jeanette asked, are we licensed? Agents, of course, need to be licensed. ISAs, it depends on your state. So I wasn't licensed when I first started. You know, in my state, I could ask questions, but I couldn't say anything. I could only ask questions. And I found that actually worked just fine, because I was able to say, you know, I have some questions to ask you, but think of me like the nurse. You know how when you go to the doctor, we all know the nurse might know stuff, but she can't tell us because she's not the doctor. That's kind of how I am. I'm not a licensed agent. I can ask questions like the nurse, and then I'll give it to Katie. She's like the doctor, and she'll answer your question. So let me write that question down, and then Katie will hit it. Now, once I became licensed, I actually still followed the same basic script because I didn't want to answer all their questions, because then why would they meet with Katie? So I just said, hey, let me ask you questions. Katie will get that for you, something like that.
Yeah, and that's a great point you're making there too. Sometimes I think our ISAs, OSAs overstep a bit on the content they need to convey to the prospect. And I think they really diminish the likelihood of actually being able to set an appointment when they do that. When they talk too much about what they think the house is worth or what we do to sell houses, they're really undermining any leverage the agent may have on the appointment and the leverage they have to actually set the appointment. So you, Anna, mentioned this in a webinar in past. A great thing to do would be have your ISA, OSA shadow the buyer or listing agent on an appointment, so they see and hear what the agent says, and they know, okay, that's the line. I don't need to go over it. Katie's going to go over it, or Tom is going to go over it. I'm going to stay in my lane here and just collect data and information. Yeah. So that's a great point.
Yeah, because then you can just know what you don't have to do. You know, and really, to set a good appointment, you really don't have to tell them hardly anything. It's more just gathering the data, and that's really it. Because the more you tell them, it's kind of like if I called my doctor and he diagnosed me over the phone after hearing my symptoms, and then he said, hey, why don't you come in and pay me a ridiculous amount of money to do? Yeah, why would I do that? You just told me everything over the phone. And so there's definitely a line, even if you're an agent setting your own appointments for yourself, just remember, hold back some value for the appointment. Otherwise you may miss the opportunity. So
love it.
Oh, go ahead.
No, so I was going to say, so the next piece of this, once you've had them pre-qualified and it's very clear that they're motivated, they're what we call a suitable seller or a nurture that's ready to go, you want to ask for the commitment. You want to ask for the appointment. I traditionally use an alternative choice close to help them identify a time slot on their calendar that works best for them. And it sounds something like this. Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, it sounds like you're potentially interested in selling your house. I've asked you X, Y, and Z, and these were your answers. So the next step would be for Katie to come out and meet with you so she can go over the plan to sell your home. Which days typically work best, weekdays or weekends?
How about weekends?
Weekends, great. Mornings or afternoons?
Afternoons are usually good.
Okay, so how about Saturday at 2, or I have a Sunday at noon?
Saturday at 2 should work.
Perfect. Okay, so that's just an alternative choice close to actually get the appointment. Then the next step here would be utilizing a script to gain the commitment. And Anna, I gotta say, I love your script on this, so take it away.
To gain commitment. Oh, okay. So I had to think for a minute, which one is this? So this is where, I think you're talking about the 3 steps. So let me head there and you tell me if I'm going the right way. All right. So Katie, when you meet with Haro, you're going to do 3 things. The first thing is you're going to go back over motivation and price. I'll share with him what you told me today. The second thing is you guys will interview each other and make sure it's a good fit. Make sure you get along with him. Make sure you like him as well. And then number 3, if everything looks good, we'll sign paperwork to activate the next step. Any questions?
That sounds great.
Perfect. And let me back up for a minute because a lot of people love that and say, whoa, what was that? So I'll repeat it real quick. It's number 1, go back over motivation and price. Number 2, interview each other. And if they have a fun personality, have fun with it. Make sure y'all like each other. If you think he's weird, don't work with him. So you can tailor that to the personality. Yet point number 2 is you'll interview each other, make sure it's a good fit. And then number 3 is if everything looks good, and this is key because I want to set it up to make it super easy for them to get the signature. Agent is still going to have to bring their A game, right? It's a sales job. Yet I want to do everything I can to set it up to make it easy for Katie to get the signature. So I'm going to say your next step would then be to sign paperwork and activate the next step. And it's on a downswing. It sounds super confident. And then I'm going to go on a downswing again. Any questions? Because it just exudes, I know what I'm talking about, right? If you say, so then we'll have you sign a contract, if that sounds okay. Any questions? You sound nervous. So it's if everything looks good, we'll have you sign paperwork to activate the next step. Any questions?
And guys, I would really strongly encourage you to record yourself doing this because you may identify some different tonalities that you're exhibiting and not recognizing that you're doing. Because that's how I trained. And when I sat down and listened to my recordings, I was terrified. I couldn't believe how I sounded. I was doing great, but I had upswings everywhere.
I'm glad you said that, Katie, because I'm thinking of a coaching client right now in the coaching program who had everybody hanging up on her. And she's like, I don't know what my deal is. So I listened to a recorded call and she was like, hello, this is so-and-so. And anyway, she listened to her calls that week and got purposeful about making it go on a downswing. She told me her hangups massively reduced in that between our 2 coaching calls.
It's just little tweaks. It really is.
It's little tweaks. So anyway, that's how you set it up to gain the commitment. If they say that they have questions about that agency agreement, at that point, I would write them down so that when I give the paper to Katie, she can see what's their objection around potentially signing this agreement, because I want her to have as much information as possible walking in the door. I look at it kind of like I'm a police dispatcher and I'm sending out Katie. The more information that I can gather about the situation she's walking into, the safer and better results she's going to have, right? And so if they say, oh, I do have a question. What do you mean sign paperwork? What if I'm not ready to do that? Or what if I want a night to think about it? I'm just going to write down and say, hey, Katie, they might want a night to think about it. A good strategy could be say, hey, do you need to think about this? I can walk out to my car, have a phone call, and I'll come back in 15 minutes to give you a second to think about it, because I told her they might want some time to think about it. So
Right.
I want to pull out any questions.
And then for the situations where you're setting an appointment with somebody that you just feel might be a little flaky, they weren't super open with you when you're going through the motivation. They seemed a little standoffish, like they were suspicious of you, but they wanted to meet with the person. My recommendation for that specific individual is to make the appointment, just like we said, and say, okay, so I'm putting this down in pencil, putting it down in pencil right now at 2 p.m. I want to put it in pen. I want to put it down permanently. So, because in doing so, Katie has to turn away any other client at 2 o'clock. She has to take time away from her family and her business. Do you foresee any reason why you would not be able to honor this commitment to meet tomorrow at 2 p.m.? And if they say no, great, I'm putting it in pen. Let's do it, right? So that's another script you can utilize to gain further commitment from the prospect. And sometimes I would just do it out of habit on a lot of them. And I really made sure I did it on the ones that gave me the flaky feeling.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think expressing Katie's going to turn away other clients and take away time from family to meet with you. Can you think of anything? Because up till this point, we might just be a name on the other end of the phone, and they just might not be connecting what's happening. They might just think Katie's at work all day and I'm just one of her many appointments. And so really defining that is huge.
Right.
We had a couple quick questions. What are your word tracks for buyer appointments? It's actually the same. So it doesn't matter if it's buyer or seller. The appointment setup is the same. Katie, if you have anything different, feel free.
No.
Okay.
Same. Yeah.
Jacqueline says the last point again. So I'll repeat it. It's number 1, go back over motivation and price. Number 2, interview each other. Make sure it's a good fit. And then number 3, if everything looks good, we'll sign paperwork to activate the next step. There you go. And Juanita says, what do you ladies use for recording calls? So Katie,
Mojo.
what do you recommend? Mojo?
We use auto dialer, Mojo, and it has a call recording function in it. Before I was even jumping on calls, when I was first doing my training, I would sit down with my Mac and turn on the recorder there and say the scripts out loud. Close my eyes, I turned my back to the computer. I did it a couple different ways, and I would go back and listen to it, because even when I was being intentional with the script, I noticed I still had flaws coming out, because you don't hear yourself the same way other people do.
Yeah. I found that even leading webinars. I might be doing it today. I say the word so all the time. And when I listen to webinars I led, I was like, oh, dang it. And so it's a good thing to use everywhere. Hopefully I don't do it anymore. Also, there is an app called Tape a Call that you can download, Tape a Call. It works with cell phones. So if you make your call through cell phones, it could work. I think those are the big ones. So yeah, there you go, Juanita. Okay, keep going, Katie.
Okay, so the next piece I want to cover here is the shared calendar element. This is huge. I've worked with a couple different teams, and I say, okay, how do you choose which agent to send the appointment to? And they go, well, I put them on hold, and I run around like a crazy person, and I start calling people trying to figure out who can take this person. And I thought, oh my word.
That's a headache.
It's a headache. You have to capitalize on the timing of that moment. If they're ready to meet right now, this is gold that this ISA OSA has just procured, and we want to get it cemented on the calendar. And I also am a firm believer that as you're growing your team, you need to lay the foundation for a 20-lane highway, just like Gary Keller says. You have to lay the foundation for your scalability and where you project you're going to be in the future. So right now, if you have one ISA and one agent and it's working for them that they communicate, that's still an issue for me, because can you do the same level of communication with 5 ISAs and 20 agents? Probably not. So the most effective way that we've overcome this challenge is we make every agent on the team share their calendar with the ISA OSAs. We also make the agents keep their calendar updated. Now, for those of you who would just be jumping into this and having their agents do it, you may feel some pushback. And the way that we overcame that issue on our team specifically was, if the ISA books it and then you come running in an hour later and say, I have something at that time, I just didn't put it on the calendar. It is now your responsibility as the agent to call that person and rebook them for a time that works for you. If that client cancels on you, the agent, that's going to hit your numbers. That's going to hit your conversion numbers as an agent, and that will be reflected upon your activity and discussed on your weekly 411 with your manager. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
And I love that actually putting the ownership on the agent, because it was something that was in my, I'm sorry, I'm going like 1,000 miles an hour. What I'm thinking is that would only have to happen 1 or 2 times, and then that wouldn't happen again. So that's the value of having some type of consequence. You know, they say if you have standards without a consequence, you only have a suggestion. So you got to think about it. If you have standards that you say, hey guys, here's what we expect, and then you make exceptions all the time, you just have suggestions. You don't actually have standards. And that's a great example of some type of consequence there. The way I looked at it on my team, and the agents were great about it, I just looked at it like, if your calendar is not shared with me, you just don't get appointments. Mm-hmm. And everybody wants appointments because that's closings, and that helps you do the things that you want to do and help the people you want to help. And so I also looked at it like, if your calendar is not shared, the consequence is you don't get appointments, and every agent wants appointments. And so again, there was a consequence.
And so I really want to be clear here too. Anna and I are talking about a lot of systems and procedures that we use on our own teams, and some others that we've heard other teams use. What is so important that I want you to take away from today's call is teams are different. Across the country, they're different. So what we say might not be the best practice for your specific situation. And the very best way for you to assess that and get guidance on it, in all honesty, is join the coaching program so we can work with you one-on-one. But there is going to be a lot of resources that you're going to take away from today's call, like the scripts that we're saying out loud, jotting them down. There's more resources like that on the ISA Facebook page and things like that that Anna has referenced earlier. But what I really don't want you guys to do is try to fit your team into our specific mold, because it might not be the mold for your team. So I just say that as a caveat, as a disclaimer, so to speak.
I'm really, really glad you're saying that, Katie. And Katie, if people want to reach out to you directly to find out, hey, how do I work with you as a coach? What's the best way to contact you?
Honestly, the best way to contact me would be via email. I know it's in the invite for this event, but it's katie@hilerealestate.com. I'll enter it in the chat box now.
Perfect.
So you can have that.
And also, you can go to isamapscoaching.com, and there's a tab for the ISA program, and then there's a button that indicates I'm interested, I want to talk to somebody, and it comes to one of us. It comes to Katie, me, or one of our other coaches. And so you don't go to some nebulous never land. You come directly to us as a coach, and then we'll reach out to you. So those are the 2 options that you can do. Awesome. Okay, so let's keep going.
Perfect. So we just talked about setting an appointment right there. The timing's important, getting it on the calendar. The next step that we take on our team to create an extra level of stickiness is we send a calendar invite to the client. So when we're putting it on the calendar, we're inviting the agent and the client. We have all of our appointments labeled the exact same way. So it would say listing consultation - Katie Collins / the client's name. The location would be the address of the home I'm meeting, where the home they're also going to be selling. If it's different, that'd be in the notes. And then in the notes section, it's going to have the client's name and phone number and my name and phone number. And what this has effectively done is it has allowed the client to accept the calendar invite, and it'll populate on their own calendar, which I got to tell you, there are few greater feelings than seeing a client accept a calendar invite for a listing consultation. Okay. Woo! Then the other great thing that this offers is ease of use. So as soon as I get in my car, I can just click the address and it's pulled up in my Google Maps. I can track it before I'm ready to go to see how traffic's doing. And then I also have really easy access to click on the phone number and call the client to reach out, introduce myself, and reconfirm the appointment and pre-qualify them yet again. So it's just made it that much easier. And I gotta tell you guys, if you want your agents to manage systems and track and do a lot of stuff, probably the best thing you could do is make it as easy for them to do it, and you'll get a higher probability of them actually getting it done. You've got to make it easy and have accountability. That's the kind of magic combo for getting agents to do anything, to be honest.
Really just people.
I'm speaking from an agent's point of view. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Easy and accountability. That's a takeaway, guys. Write that down. Make it easy and hold it accountable.
Yes.
So we had a question. What's your approach to longer term nurtures that maybe could benefit from an agent? My gut reaction to that question, let me finish reading it because I know not everybody can see it. So what is your approach to longer term nurtures that could benefit from talking to an agent sooner rather than staying with an ISA? My knee-jerk reaction, again, it varies from team to team, so there's some customization that goes here. Yeah, I look at it like the reason the whole ISA role even came about was because agents are typically meeting with clients, and the long-term follow-up is where opportunity can be lost if they end up with too many leads that they're following up with. So I look at it like, well, whatever the agent could do, let me just train the ISA to do it as long as they're allowed to with licensure and whatever's going on in your state. And basically train the ISA to handle it. The ISA should be the best person on the team for follow-up because that's their one thing, is follow-up and conversion. So Katie, I'm curious, you might have a different perspective because again, you come from a different team and it can vary from team to team. So what's your perspective on that?
Let me just give you a little background on why I have this perspective. The majority of my clients, like 90% of them, were expired withdrawn for sale by owner. And a number of them were old expired withdrawn for sale by owners. So the way my mind operates is I just want to get the listing signed. I don't care if you're 6 months out, 8 months out, 10 months out, because I have experienced oftentimes where sellers tell me, oh, I'm not going to be ready until 6 months. I'll call 3 months, or our ISA will call 3 months later, and they're already on the market with someone else. And I take it as the sellers are lying to themselves. They just don't quite understand the benefits of selling now or how their situation could actually be different and all this other stuff. So I came from the mindset of I just want to get out there, and even if they're not ready to go for 8 months, and they still hold true to that, I still want to take the listing. But this is why. When I take the listing on my team, I then have another team that helps me from the administrative department. And when I would have coming soon listings, I would have my listing manager call them every week. So basically do a job similar to an ISA in terms of following up and staying in communication with them to keep them engaged in our process and to even help kind of push them to move sooner than later if it's to their detriment. If waiting too long is putting them in a different marketplace and whatnot, when they really should be moving sooner based on their needs. So I had a back-end support system to help me with that follow-up so I didn't lose taken listings. I would say that wasn't every single one of my situations. It probably represents 10 to 15% of all clients ever, where I'd go out on something that was further out and either bring them in and they're launching sooner, or I take them and we nurture them still after I've taken the listing before putting them on the market. Yeah. So it should kind of be the exception, not the norm, so to speak.
Well, and I think that's a great example too of the team differences, right? Because if you have all that leverage on the listing admin side, listing operations, why would you not do that, right? That makes sense. If you're on a team where it's an agent and yourself, or like I know when I started at the horror group, it was me and 2 agents, and we had one operations whose hair was on fire. Mm-hmm. So it wouldn't have worked in that situation to do it that way. So again, you got to just customize to your team, and that's part of what we're here for. That's part of why that there is a ISA coaching program, because there isn't one just plug and play for everybody. You have to customize to your situation.
And you have to think too, like, are your agents super busy, or would they benefit from going out on an early listing appointment and just getting into relationship with somebody that much sooner? There's a couple different things you'd have to look at to really make that assessment for your team, really and truly.
Perfect. So let's go back to the calendar invite. So you put the agent, you put the client on there, they accept it. One thing I'd like to add, and then we'll move on to what do you do after you do the calendar invite, is say that you have that person that you're kind of iffy on. You know how Katie role played that one where it was, I want to put you in pen. Right now you're in pencil. What you can do is say, hey, Katie, I'm going to send you a calendar invite for that appointment with Haro on Saturday at 2:00. What will make that official is accepting that calendar invite. If you do not accept the calendar invite, it actually will not go into the calendar. So how soon, Katie, can you or will you accept the calendar invite I'm about to send to you? What I found doing it that way is the ones that didn't accept, They were no-shows anyway, most of the time. And if they were serious, they accepted it. So again, there's exceptions to that, but typically speaking, if they didn't accept it, I pretty much knew that they were going to be a no-show anyway. So that's another layer you could put if you feel that you need to.
Yeah,
okay.
That's a great point.
Okay, so Katie, what do you email, or do you email them?
Oh, yes.
Off the packet, all that.
Great question. So the ISA's made the call, has great conversation, gotten all the details out, put them on the calendar. Katie's meeting with them on Monday at 2 p.m. Here's the calendar invite. I'm also going to send you an email introducing you to Katie with a copy of our pre-listing packet. Will you have a couple minutes to review that before the appointment on Monday?
Yeah, I'll make some time. Great.
Yeah. So in that email introductory, I get notified as well. So I'm having another opportunity to have a connection via email, but also, almost more importantly, they have my email now too. You don't have to put the listing agent on this, really and truly. So if they're still on the calendar invite, the benefit I really like from this more so than anything else is a pre-listing packet. On our team, we don't even call it a pre-listing packet. I just said that for the purposes of us speaking the same language on this call. On our team, we call it our company resume, because we intend to hold ourselves out differently than most agents, and we want our clients to feel as if they met with a business professional. So we start that groundwork from the very beginning and kind of changing our vernacular a bit and our phrasing for a lot of the common things that people do in real estate.
Yeah, I like how you call it a company resume, because when I think pre-listing packet, I actually have a trash can next to me with a whole bunch of packets that came in the mail from different businesses.
Yeah.
And when pre-listing packet, I just think one more piece of mail. Company resume is a different level. I love that. I'm gonna have to start talking about that more. That's really good, Katie.
I love it. So, and then the way I think of it too is the pre-listing packet is the resume, and my job on the listing appointment is the interview. Resume, interview. It helps you get a clarity around what's included on the pre-listing packet resume and what you're saying at an interview, because it's two different things. So, yeah. Okay, then a couple things happen here. As soon as the appointment's set, our agents have a 24-hour window in which they have to reach out and introduce themselves over the phone to the client. This is where we're taking it away from the ISA. Our ISAs have done a great job of name dropping us, right? Katie's awesome. You're going to love working with Katie. So I, in turn, make sure I humanize this process by saying, Anna told me so much about you. I'm super excited to be meeting with you on Monday at 2, and go from there. Now, for that initial call, let's say that Anna set this appointment for tomorrow at 2 p.m. I would make the introduction and I would confirm it because it's within 24 hours. I would also use it as an opportunity to rehash motivation. Okay, so the introductory call is introducing myself and rehashing their motivation. Sometimes it includes confirming it right then and there if it's within a 24-hour window. Let's go back to my initial example. Let's say it's a Monday appointment. Then I am then I am introducing myself, rehashing motivation, qualification, and hanging up. Great, look forward to seeing you on Monday at 2, bye. I then call the client again Sunday evening or Monday morning, probably Monday morning because I don't like to work on Sunday. Yeah. Monday morning, reconfirming the appointment at 2 p.m., same day. So those time windows are extremely important. The client has no problem canceling on me, Katie, if they've never met me or spoken to me. I don't exist to them yet. Yeah. Right? So when Anna sets it, it's so important that I jump in quickly into this relationship and dynamic so that they actually realize I'm a person with a life and a schedule, and they need to do me the decency of calling to, and we don't say cancel, calling to reschedule, right? So huge, crucial point there with the timelines.
Yeah, that's huge. Well, and I find too, working with some of the MAPS coaching clients is they'll think I have a script problem because I have a 30% show ratio. 30% of my appointments are showing up and 70% are gone. I must need to change my script. And then we listen to a recorded call or role play, and it's like, that sounds fantastic. Mm-hmm. So then the next question is, what's your timeline when you set it to how far out? And what we find is anything that's over 48 hours, good luck. I mean, you might have the occasional one show up. So the trick is, if you do set it more than 48 hours, just to what Katie was saying, is you have to have no more than 24 to 48 hours contact, or you will have a very high chance of a no-show. So again, it's not always just one thing or the most obvious thing that could be creating the drop-off, right? It could be scripting. It could be time frame. It could be maybe the agent didn't call and introduce themselves. Maybe I, as the ISA, didn't build up Katie enough that they actually care about this appointment. So there's a lot of angles that you have to look at, even more than I realized when I got into the coaching program. There's so many angles that you have to look at to see what's going on here. Lots of things.
And you have to be able to, this is the really tricky part, guys. This is where we go from E to P, entrepreneurial to purposeful. You have to have a way of measuring this activity. You have to have a way of being able to inspect what you expect. Meaning, if I'm a team leader, if I'm an owner, if my method for determining if Anna is calling, let's say Anna's an agent, if my way of determining that Anna's calling the client within 24 hours of an ISA setting the appointment is by just asking Anna, not going to work. Not going to work. I can't just be like, hey, Anna, did you call him within 24 hours? And she says, yeah, I'm pretty sure I did. Yeah, totally. No, so this is where I point to putting in some systems. On our team, we heavily utilize our CRM for these specific instances. I can see when the lead has been transferred to Katie because the appointment was set. Katie has to log the call in the CRM within 24 hours of it being transferred to her. It's very easy for me to log in and see, hey, how did you do it? Now, across the world, across teams, there's different ways that they've been doing this. And I'm not going to knock them just because they're different from mine. They're working. I know another team that sends a group text message, right? For every single time they set an appointment, they text the client with the agent in it. So that's how the agent's notified to make the call and reach out. And some do the group email as well. There's different methods to do this. But there has to be some way to measure it so that it doesn't get lost, that the agent wakes up 3 days later, it's like, oh my gosh, I think Anna set an appointment for me a couple days ago. See what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and especially if you're newer, it could seem crazy to think that you would lose track of these things. And then the busier you get, you can't remember who you talked to 5 hours ago because there's so much happening. And so I'm really glad you said that, Katie.
And if you're putting it on a Post-it note, good luck.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that gives me so much anxiety just to see Post-it notes now. I'm like, wait, tell me that somewhere else.
Well, I used to think too, because I know a lot of people have the papers, but then they stay on the papers. They don't make it into a CRM. And I used to think to myself, if our building burned down tomorrow, what would happen to our business? If it's electronic and in the CRM, okay. If you've got papers everywhere, what are you going to do? And funny enough, our building actually just flooded from the roof down.
I thought you were going to say caught on fire. I was like,
and literally the second floor flooded and seeped down to the first floor and a bunch of stuff got messed up. So it can happen. Make sure it's electronic, not on paper, because it will
be. To dovetail on your point, I want this message to be heard by all the rainmakers on this call, all the business owners that are logged in right now. Your database is your business and your business is your database. So if you decide in 10 years, God bless you, you want to retire, guess what you're selling? It is your CRM. It is all the names and numbers and notes and information that your ISA and agents and yourself have collected over the time you spent in business. So, just to depart from the what if I got hit by a bus tomorrow or building caught on fire, it's what value, what can you sell as a business when you decide to retire? What can you leave to your children who maybe want to follow in your footsteps? I mean, that is your business right there. So just think of that when you're implementing these systems and how you want your agents and ISAs to operate at a high level for you. Yeah. So,
my 2 cents. So, Kate, you have some questions in the chat box, but before we go to questions, anything else you want to add on the process? Because some of them are a little off topic. So, anything else about ISA to agent handoff and then that agent communication?
The big thing here that I'll say, the last point I really, really want to make on this is, what I was instructed as an agent was I cannot get mad at my ISA if I feel like the appointment is crappy. I have the client's phone number I'm calling to introduce myself. I'm calling to confirm. I need to take that conversation as an opportunity to requalify them. So for me personally, I was always reading the notes before I even called, so I got a gauge of who it is I'm speaking with. And I always dug back in on motivation. And depending on the notes and how I'm receiving the information from the client on the phone, I might even hit some other things like decision makers, interviewing more agents, just to make sure I'm getting a full picture of what I'm walking into.
Yeah.
And if for some reason I'm having this conversation, it's not aligning with the conversation that it looked like Anna had, and I need to cancel the appointment, I'm relaying that information back to Anna so that in the future we can work more harmoniously together to ensure that we're getting quality appointments on the board for us to have the highest conversions. So I really have to stress that the agent needs to requalify. I really feel I need to stress too that the agent needs to help keep the appointment on the calendar. So if the client calls to cancel, we really need to be working with our agents at a high level of training them how to reschedule somebody as opposed to just letting them cancel, right? So again, the alternative choice close method works there as well. And if for some reason you miss them, you couldn't connect, get that back to the ISA as soon as possible so they can re-engage and get them back on the calendar. Yeah. So those are the big other pieces I'd say at that stage to take away before we jump into these other questions. Did you have anything you wanted to add on that too, Anna?
I would say the biggest thing, and it kind of taps into one of the questions that Zach just typed in, is the biggest thing that I see, and this comes from the Facebook group. There's the Facebook group, ISA Mastermind group. There's like 3,000 people in there. And I find I get a lot of private messages. And I think it's because I'm like the girl behind the screen. So I can tell you all my stuff and it's kind of anonymous. So I hear it all. And the number one thing that I hear from ISAs, they say, I love my team. I love my team owner. I think they're great as people. And I'm about to leave the team because I don't hear feedback on my appointments. And if you think about it, guys, we're hiring results-oriented people that want to see if you're results-oriented, that's the one key to being a solid ISA. Well, if you're results-oriented, you're going to want to know what the outcome was of your appointment. So let me just ask you, for those of you that are agents or maybe you're the team owner, how would you feel as far as a motivation standpoint if you're results oriented, you're setting stuff up and yet you don't ever hear what comes of it? How long would you tolerate that before your energy was just totally zapped? It's not going to work. So what you want to do is figure out a feedback loop. And again, this can vary from team to team. You know, in an ideal world, we're using CRM because everybody has access and can see it, and we're updating, you know, hey, met with client, they signed, woohoo. Sometimes it requires making a spreadsheet. You know, again, that's where you customize to your team and what works for you. But the biggest thing I want you to hear is you have to close the feedback loop or you will absolutely lose talented ISAs. Another thing I want to say is if you're an ISA on this call and you're like, that's me, I don't ever hear anything, take some ownership and ask yourself, well, what can I do about that? On our team, we had that challenge for a while, and I just got to the point, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to make a spreadsheet. And everyone that I set an appointment with, I'm going to put their name down, what day they're supposed to come in, and which agent they're meeting with. Because that gave me back some control to say, hey, Katie, last week you were supposed to meet with, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Smith on Tuesday. What happened? And Zach, to your point, you asked, what's the follow-up look like? If I'm going to Katie and saying, hey, Katie, what happened with Mr. and Mrs. Smith on Tuesday? If she says they did not sign, and it's because X, Y, and Z. I'm going to start logging all the reasons why people aren't signing because it's going to give me a clue as to what is our hole. What is the thing that we're missing? You know, if they say every single time, I need a night to think about it, what that really means is I probably didn't ask, what are you looking for in an agent? Because Katie didn't know to point out that she does those things. So I need to ask, what are you looking for? Maybe that's feedback for Katie to say, hey, let me run out to my car, make a call, and I'll come back. So you want to find out what are the reasons people aren't signing so you can start customizing your scripting and different things with your team.
And on our team, just to piggyback on that, on our team, it was required for the agent to track the outcome of every set appointment. Did it cancel? Have I just not gone on it yet? It's still on the calendar. Did I go on it? Did I go on it and take it? Did I go on it and lose it to another agent? Did I go on it and they're thinking it over? Or did I go on it and decide not to work with them because they're just not in a position to transact? Those were all the things that we tracked, essentially. And so that, I have to say, yes, it's so important to get that feedback loop in for the ISA, but almost more of a primary reason to track this is, guys, you're investing money in these ISAs. Think of them as a lead generation source, just how you would pay for Zillow or any other of your leads. You want to make your return on investment. If you recognize that these agents are having lower conversion rates, then you probably need to do some work with your agents.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, it's, for me, I just can't even fathom a world where agents aren't tracking this, because it was how I was measured every week in my success. Like,
Well,
what else would I?
Well, and let's point that out, because especially if you're a leader on this call listening and you lead people, Katie just said, I can't even imagine not tracking this because it's how I measured my success every week. Well, high accountability. So it goes back to make it simple and keep it accountable. I know Tim, who led Katie, Tim is an accountable guy. And so I'm confident that there was that accountability there. So when you treat it that way, it's hard to think, well, how would you not do this? Mm-hmm. Right? It comes back to leadership and holding people accountable. Yeah. Okay, so let's hit the questions. Before we do, Katie, if anybody, in case they missed it earlier, if you're interested in talking to Katie about being one of her coaching clients, or we have several coaches actually that work with our program, just go to isamapscoaching.com. There's a tab that says program. You can click on that, and then it'll say, hey, I'm ready to enroll, or hey, I want to talk to a coach, and you'll actually get one of us, one of the coaches. By the way, side note, there's also a webinars tab, and we put all of our YouTube lives from this one will be on there. There's probably 12 or 15 old ones in there that you can go check out. So again, it's isamapscoaching.com, and then you can see a bunch of tabs for different things on there. Okay, so Kayla asked a question a while back. What is your approach to longer-term nurtures? Oh, we already hit that one.
Yeah, sorry. We hit that one.
Jeanette, should my person go to bold? Yes. Done. 100%. So if you're not sure what that is, bold is the Keller Williams class, and you don't have to be Keller Williams to take it. We always have different people from different brokerages in there, and it's a class about mindset. You get a lot of skills, and I find that the top agents go over and over and over dozen at least times, many of the top agents that I know. So absolutely go to bold.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. The one thing I would say, if you're an ISA or OSA, keep in mind bold is mostly for the agent, because that's the primary audience. So they'll talk about 20 contacts a day. Keep in mind that's for the agent. So if you're an ISA or OSA, that 20 contacts goal is actually higher for you because you're in the activity all day. That's the only tweak that I would make about bold. All right. What's the next question?
Google Calendar. Yes. We all shared Google Calendar. Yeah.
Perfect. I think Outlook works just as fine as well. I don't know very many people that use Outlook, but I've heard that it works, in case that's another option. Oh, I love this question. So a script to close for an appointment when they don't want to meet yet. Maybe they want to wait till spring or next season. So I will say, Angela, there's a lot that we don't know, because I'd want to ask them, well, what makes you hesitant to meet now? And their answer that could change
so many different things. Yeah.
So many things. But if it is, I want to wait till spring, or I don't want to list it till March, what I personally would say, because that's only 4 months away at this point, 3.5, 4 months, I would say, you know what, Angela, that's actually the perfect time to meet now. We prefer to meet listings early so that we can get the stager out there and make it that you're not rushed at the last minute getting that house ready. So what we would do now is meet and make a game plan. It does not mean that you're listing your house tomorrow. And I found that line, we're just meeting to make a game plan. It doesn't mean that you're listing your house tomorrow. That helped calm fears, because I think some people have this mindset that if I meet with you, I'm going live in like a week. And that's not the case at all. I would much rather meet with somebody now, because if they have staging work that needs to be done or some repairs, we want to speak into that. We want to prevent them putting work into their house that's not going to make sense or reap them a benefit. So that's my personal favorite. I look at it like if they're a seller, let's meet with them if they're 6 months or less. If they're a buyer, 3 months or less. And again, hey, let's meet, make a game plan.
Yep, great. How do you pay your ISA OSAs? So it's going to range from team to team, depending on what specifically you're having them do, what your cost of living is, what your market's like. You know, I know best practices for this, and I sometimes I shudder just to say it because I hate it when people are on the call and they're like, I don't get paid that. And I'm like, well, there's probably different reasons behind it.
Yeah.
Just bear that in mind while I say it, but it's typically anywhere from $1,000 to $2,500 a month base salary with 5 to 10% commission on closed transactions that they sourced. Does that sound right to you too, Anna?
Yeah, that's I would say that's typical. And actually, if you go to isamapscoaching.com, there's under webinars, there's an older one that talks about how do you hire, train, and retain ISAs. And we talk a little bit about compensation in there as well, more in depth than we have time for right now. So you can check that out.
Yeah, it's a whole other wormhole.
Yeah, and it can depend on your state. It can depend on licensure. So again, that's why you need to customize to your team, price point, all that stuff. Okay, so can the agent call too soon, or is the sooner the better? So I think that was probably typed in when you were talking about that call between the ISA and the actual appointment happening.
Yeah. Okay. Client does not show or does not sign an appointment, who owns the follow-up lead, ISA or agent? That's going to vary from team to team also. For me, I owned it on my team. If they didn't sign, I had a very high close rate though. I mean, I was vicious on appointments. I hate follow-up.
How do you feel about that?
I fucking hate it. So I just went in there every time and closed people 5 times. It was the standard. And so it was just very few that were kind of what I call floaters. So I would keep those myself and manage. But if I ever felt like one was getting away from me, which may happen, I think 1 or 2 times, I would transfer it back.
Yeah. So. Well, and another way that you can do that too, it's similar. Again, customize. On our team, I just got with the agent and we just discussed who has the most rapport with this client at that point, and we would just customize it per client. And that's how we did it. So again, I think if you're on a smaller team, that could probably work. If you're on a bigger team, you're going to need to be more systematized than that, because we really did. We just were, hey, what happened with the Smiths? Did you get a good vibe? Which one of us has more rapport? And also which one of us is going to actually be faithful and consistent. Now, I will say, as an ISA, if Katie was taking over that follow-up, it's still my lead too, right? Mm-hmm. So what I personally would do is in the CRM, set little tasks to just check and make sure, is Katie keeping up with this person? I might not be calling them, yet a task to make sure it's happening, even though I'm not the one doing it, because it's my lead. It's really the team lead ultimately, right? Mm-hmm. It's the team lead, yet my pay is dependent on it. Katie's pay is dependent on it. I want to watch it, even though I might not be doing it. All right. So how are leads being distributed? What systems do you guys use? That is, oh gosh. What's that?
That's a whole class.
Yeah. I don't know that we can get into that in this call. That's one of those customization things. What I would say is, that's something, if I have a coaching client, we might talk about that for 3 calls. It's going to depend on the needs of your team. So let's just leave it at that for now, and then reach out to us if you need to talk further about it. Okay. Oh, I like what Fred said. He said ISA, which typically means inside sales agent. He said important source of appointments. I love it. Yes. I heard one the other day too. What was it? Oh, enthusiasm. Some of the letters stand for I am sold myself. I thought that was pretty good. Because you can't be enthusiastic if you're not convinced. Okay.
Okay, so this next one, the points, the tracking points, here they are. Ready? Did the appointment cancel? Like, did I even go on it? Yes or no, right? So did it cancel? Then the next one is, did I go on it? If you hit yes, then there's a drop-down field, and these are the drop-down options. You took them, so taken as a client, lost them. The client is thinking it over, so they're a floater. Or the fourth one is not transacting.
Meaning just not moving forward at all?
I met with them. They realized they owe too much on the house. They can't afford to sell it this year. They're going to sit tight another year, and we're going to investigate next year. So that's not going to be held against me in my conversion rate because that's outside of my control, right? Or here's my favorite story all time ever. Took a listing. She was doing renovations in the house before I even met with her. I didn't even want her to do them really. Kept calling her, checking in. She starts ghosting me, not answering. I finally get her on the phone. Katie, I was moving to Waco because I'm recently divorced, but I've fallen in love with the flooring guy. He's already moved in. Don't judge me. I'm older than you. When you know, you know. Then he's living with
awesome.
me, and we're staying put. I got to tell you, I call them every year. They're still together.
That's awesome.
She didn't sell, and I can't hold that, against my conversion numbers because she had a life situation change.
Yeah,
that's my favorite one that's happened. So, just to recap, did they cancel? If you went on the appointment, then did you take it, lose it, and lose it means another agent has it on the MLS right now and you're crying, or thinking it over, not transacting. I was also measured on my cancel to kept appointment because I shared that responsibility with the ISA for keeping the client engaged and on the calendar. So that was another metric that Tim would talk through with me every week in our 411.
It's really good. I love it. Okay, let's do the last question and then we'll be out of time. So Lindsay says, what do you think the disconnect is when a lead gives the ISA all this information and they're interested and then they no-show on the agent? So here's my answer for that one. It could be a lot of things. I think that the ISA likely did not do a good job of building up the agent. Here's an example, true story. Annalisa was new on our team. She's now one of our coaches. She's fantastic.
Awesome.
Years ago, she was one of our new agents, had never taken a listing, and I set her a listing appointment. I told the client, I was like, you are going to love Annalisa. Now, I couldn't talk about her stats because she didn't have any, right? Yet I talked about her qualities as a human being. So I said, you're going to love Annalisa. She's really a go-getter. She really defends the people that are in her corner. And so she's going to have your back and she's got incredible work ethic. You are absolutely going to love her. Well, it turned out Annalisa got sick the day of the appointment. Now keep in mind, she's never taken a listing. I called the client and said, don't be surprised. You're going to meet with Haro. I just want you to be surprised when a dude.
Owner of our company, by the way.
Owner who taught Annalisa everything she knows. And they were like, but we wanted to meet Annalisa. And so everybody in the room was laughing because they heard me struggling to get this taken care of. And anyway, the point and my big takeaway from that was they had never met Annalisa. They had no personal relationship with her, nothing. That all came from the way that I spoke about her and built up the relationship. So my takeaway was I always need to be building up the agent and explaining the role of what that person will do. One practical, go ahead and then I'll give a script.
My takeaway as an agent is I really need to instill trust in my ISAs. So keep going.
Yeah, that's really good. So here's a script and then we'll round it out. So back to you, Lindsay, of that handoff and what happens. A great way that I found to describe this is I would say, Katie, think of me kind of like the nurse, and I'm gathering your information right now. Yeah, Annalisa is the doctor. She's really the one you want to talk to. She will be able to answer your questions. She's going to be able to analyze your situation and tell you what we need to do to move forward. So while I'm asking the questions, think of me like the nurse. Annalisa is the doctor. You're going to love working with her, and she'll be your primary contact. So it reduced the who is this and why are they calling me, because I explained it from the very beginning. So Lindsay, I think that's the biggest thing is they're just not explaining the relationship switch and also not building up the agent. And by the way, that helps signature. Because those people that were upset Annalisa wasn't going to be there, they would have signed with her because they were already so excited, had never met her. So that's what it is. All right, guys, we are out of time. Check out isamapscoaching.com. You can click on the tab about the program and you'll get to one of us when you submit the button saying you want to learn more. And we will see you guys on a future webinar. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye, Katie.
Bye.